Hi, I'm Mackenzie with BMW Northwest, and today I'm joined with Larry Williams, one of our client advisors, and today he's going to be explaining the differences between leasing a vehicle and purchasing a vehicle. Now, Larry, what are the main differences between the two?
Well, let's start with the similarities. And in both cases, there's a term or a length of time that you're going to be making payments. If a person finances, it might be 24 months, it may be 48 months. Some people go all the way to 96 months or something in between.
Really?
Yes, and they make a payment. Each payment, they're getting closer to owning the vehicle, and of course, at the very end, they satisfy the loan, they get the title. Leasing, there's a term, 24 months. Most people go with 36 months and have to make the payment each month, but at the very end, they don't get the vehicle. They can come to the dealership and toss the dealership the keys, or they can lease another vehicle, or if they like the vehicle that much, they can convert it from a lease to a finance, and then of course they're going to work toward owning that vehicle.
Interesting. Now, are there any common misconceptions about leasing?
Yes, a big one is, well, what's going to happen at the end of the lease? People have heard horror stories. Oh, I got this charge and that charge, and they hassled me. It was an unpleasant experience. But usually what happens and what causes that is they bring the car back damaged. Now, the leasing company, they want the car to be brought back with normal wear and tear. But if a person brings a car back and it's got bald tires, it's got dents all over the place, and it's got a broken windshield, well, yeah, they'll probably be charged.
Exactly,
for that.
yeah.
Their payment isn't going to change. That's going to stay the same term, but sometimes that's what happens. Now, if we look at a finance, they're penalized as well. Same vehicle, bald tires, dents all over the place, the windshield's cracked. Well, it's going to diminish the value of their trade. Or if they're going to sell it private party, it's going to lower the value. So, again, with a lease, what BMW wants is for it to be a pleasant experience. So they're not going to get hassled at the end.
Always.
And this little circle here, Mackenzie, if a dent is inside this little circle, no charge.
No charge.
None. If the dent is inside this blue ring, then it's $100. Now,
It's very interesting.
that's a pretty big size
That's a
dent.
big size, yes.
$100. And it costs more than that to do PDR, paintless
Right.
dent repair. And then if it's outside of this ring, then it'll be $400 to $450 depending on which body panel this ding is on. So they expect normal wear and tear. Another misconception, and then in fact you were asking a question on this, and what was that a little bit earlier?
Now, about the mileage
Yeah.
mileage restrictions, how does
Okay.
that work with leases?
For a lot of people, they think, well, I don't want to lease a car because I want to drive it. Or if I lease a car, then I can't drive it because of miles. So most people can figure out how many miles a year they drive. So you buy a lease that will accommodate that. So if it's 7,500 miles or less, then that's how many miles you want to buy. If it's 10,000 miles, 12,000 miles, 15,000 miles, I have a client who has a 17,000 mile a year lease. She's got 51,000 miles to use in 3 years.
Interesting.
That's a lot of miles.
A lot.
So again, there really isn't a cap, and there are people who have 20,000 mile a year leases. So in the case of my client, if she doesn't use all those 51,000 miles, let's say she ends up driving 45,000 miles, then she's going to be able to get a credit for those unused miles. Yes.
Interesting. Now, are there any risk factors when it comes to leasing versus purchasing?
Leasing, there's more protection than in purchasing.
Really?
Yes. So for one reason, if a person leases a car versus financing, they know what the car is going to be worth in 3 years. They're going to know what the residual value is. Now, take a person who finances a car, let's say 5 or 6 years. Is there any way for them to know what the future value of that car is going to be?
It's not.
It's impossible.
Exactly.
Or let's say they finance it for 3 years. Looking 3 years into the future, the year 2024, is there any way that they're going to know what the value is going to be? And if you have a lease vehicle, you know what that value is going to be. Now, let's say, for example, 3 years out, they finance a vehicle and the market's soft, or the value of their car doesn't hold. Well, that's going to affect them as far as their trade value or if they're going to sell it.
Right.
If a person leases a vehicle at the end of 3 years, in the same scenario, doesn't matter. The market can be as soft as Jello. It doesn't matter because it's not their car.
Interesting.
It's the leasing institutions or the financial institution's car. Now, let's say on the other hand, 3 years from now, person finances a vehicle. The car is worth more than they expect. Like right now with this global chip shortage, car prices have escalated in terms of used vehicles. So now they're in an equitable situation. Good for them. They have a higher trade value, or they can sell their car for more than they expected than when they bought it 3 years ago. Same thing with a lease. So at the end of a 3-year lease, if the value of the vehicle is higher and it's over the residual value, let's say $2,000 over the residual value, then they can take that $2,000 and put it down on another lease and lower their payment, maybe even get the same payment.
Really?
With no money out of their pocket.
Now what about car accidents? How does that kind of have effect with leases?
Okay, that's another good one. So if a person wrecks a car and they finance it, then they're going to have diminished value. That's the first thing a person is going to see on the Carfax, a potential buyer of that wrecked car that this person owns or they're financing. Yellow triangle, black exclamation mark, and on the side is going to show either the car has been in an accident or it's been damaged. The value of the car is going to be lower because it's got a Carfax indicator. A person who leases a vehicle, they get in a wreck 2 months from now, doesn't matter. They get in a wreck 4 months later, it doesn't matter because it's not theirs.
Right.
They don't own the car. So that's another protection.
Interesting. Now, do you have any tips for someone who's trying to decide between either leasing a vehicle or purchasing a vehicle?
That's a great question. You can boil it down to ownership cycle. So there are some people who tend to own their vehicles for longer periods of time. And they're okay with the vehicle being out of the manufacturer's warranty. And they'll drive the car until the wheels fall off, as they say. And they don't like the idea of renting a car, so leasing just doesn't appeal to them. Other people, their buying cycle is every 3 to 4 years. So for them, leasing would make sense. In fact, leasing would save them a lot of money.
Save them, really?
Absolutely. Because you take a 3-year lease versus a 3-year finance, and that lease car is going to be way less expensive as far as a monthly payment as compared to a 3-year finance vehicle.
Really?
Yes. And if a person has a 4-year finance or 5-year finance or maybe even a 6-year finance, the lease payment is going to be lower. So if a person is concerned about, and most of us are, outgo of cash, yeah, leasing can be a very, very good option. And then the other thing with the lease too, the car is going to be under warranty. And with BMW, 3 years, 36,000 miles, complimentary maintenance is part.
Oh, really? So that's standard with every lease?
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
interesting.
And I must say it's actually standard with any car that a person finances, but that makes the lease appealing. Is
exactly.
That it's always under warranty and it's going to be under maintenance.
Always taken care of.
Yeah, up to 3 years, 36,000 miles.
Interesting. So it really just depends on the individual between which decision they would choose to go with and their driving habits and, of course, and ownership. Now, when it comes to leasing and financing, what are the pros for leasing?
Well, one, again, we talked about we can't foresee the future. We don't know. So a person buys a car, and let's say they're single, and it's a nice, sporty coupe. Maybe a Z4, it's a 2-seater. Get married and they have 5 kids at once. That's not going to work. But they finance the vehicle for 5 or 6 years. Now, if a person leases a car in that same situation for 3 years, it's a much shorter term. And of course, they're probably going to have to figure out something to do with 5 kids, but it's a shorter term. So I guess a simple way to put it is if a person leases, it's a shorter term, person finances for 5 or 6 years, and something happens, their lifestyle changes.
And then they can trade that coupe for an X7.
Yes, that would probably have room for 5 kids.
Right.
So it's a shorter term. And then another advantage for leasing, as I mentioned, is the payment's going to be lower. Another thing is less out of pocket. So the down payment's going to be lower typically for a lease than it would be for a finance.
Interesting.
Another advantage is that with leasing, gap insurance is included.
Oh, really?
So yes, guaranteed asset protection. So let's say the car is totaled. It's a flood loss, or it's been an accident so bad that they total out the car, or maybe a fire destroyed the car. The insurance company appraises the value of the car, and they owe more than what the car is worth. So they've got to make up that extra money, but Gap will do that for them. It'll pay the car off for them.
That's standard with every lease.
Yes, it's standard with every lease. If a person finances a vehicle, they can get Gap insurance, but they're going to have to pay for it.
Okay. Now, what are some pros to financing?
Financing, no payment.
No payment.
That's pretty cool, not having a car payment.
Right.
And along with that, a person could, if they kept the car for beyond the manufacturer's warranties, buy a warranty. And you can kick out the warranty. They may decide to for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years. And you take the cost of that warranty, $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, which is a chunk of change, admittedly. But compare that with buying a car for 50 grand or 60 grand. That's a very small amount.
You can keep the same vehicle, but just purchase a warranty.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Larry, for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this video and explaining the differences between leasing a vehicle and purchasing a vehicle. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to give us a call or, of course, comment down below. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next video.